Imagine waking up, stepping onto your porch with a fresh cup of coffee, looking out at the land your grandfather broke his back to buy, and discovering that, overnight, it doesn't belong to you anymore. No fire, no bank foreclosure, no government seizure. Just a single, thin sheet of paper taped to your gate, claiming that your 50 acres of private ranch land have been reclassified as community green space by a homeowners association you never joined, never paid dues to, and honestly, tried your best to ignore for the last decade. That was my Tuesday morning. According to the Willow Creek HOA, my alfalfa fields were now a public park. My barn was a rustic photo opportunity. And my fences? They were now considered unauthorized barriers to community unity. I remember staring at that letter, the cheap printer paper fluttering in the wind, and thinking, how in the world can a group of strangers just vote themselves ownership of my property? I stood there for a long time, listening to the wind rustle through the grass, feeling the heat of the sun on my neck. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a clerical error. This was a hostile takeover disguised as neighborhood bureaucracy. And as I crumpled that letter in my fist, I realized something. They didn't want a neighbor. They wanted a victim. But what they didn't know was that they had just picked a fight with a man who had nothing but time, money, and a very specific set of skills when it came to making trespassers regret their life choices. Before we get into the absolute madness that followed, let me know in the comments, what's the most insane thing an HOA has ever tried to pull on you? Because trust me, whatever it is, Margaret Dawson is about to top it. I knew the storm was coming before I even saw the clouds. It arrived in the form of a beige sedan rolling up my gravel driveway like it owned the place. You don't send a vehicle like that unless you're trying to project authority on a budget. The car stopped about 20 feet from where I was standing. The engine ticked as it cooled. Then, the door opened and out stepped the architect of my misery, Margaret Dawson. If you looked up power-tripping HOA president in the dictionary, you'd find her picture. She looked like she'd been stuffed into her pastel blazer with a tire pump. Her hair was a helmet of hairspray that defied physics, and her face was set in a permanent expression of smelling something slightly unpleasant, which, in this case, was probably my livestock. She marched up my driveway with a clipboard clutched to her chest like it was the 10 Commandments. 2 other board members trailed behind her, a tall, nervous-looking man, and a woman who was too busy typing on her phone to look at where she was walking. They radiated the specific kind of confidence that comes from never having done a day of manual labor in their lives. Mr. Monroe, she announced. She didn't ask. She stated it, like she was reading my name off a warrant. I'm Margaret Dawson, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. We sent you a notification regarding the community land designation. She said the word designation like she was bestowing a knighthood upon me, not stealing my property. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, arms crossed, letting the silence stretch out. I found that people like Margaret hate silence. It makes them feel like their authority isn't bouncing back at them. Well, she asked, tapping a manicured nail on her clipboard. We'd like to discuss the transition. I finally spoke. Transition? Yes, she said, flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a shark smile. Your land has been incorporated into the HOA jurisdiction due to historical community usage. The board voted on it last night. We're here to coordinate the removal of your perimeter fencing so the landscaping committee can begin the trail installation. I stared at her. Trail installation? On my cow pasture? It's not a pasture anymore, Mr. Monroe. It's the Willow Creek Nature Preserve. It's going to raise property values for everyone. She swept her hand across the horizon as if she had personally painted the landscape. We need your cooperation to remove any private property signage, barriers, and she wrinkled her nose pointing at my tractor, unsightly machinery. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was a loud, sharp bark of a laugh that made the nervous man behind her jump. Hold on. You think you and your little club took a vote, and that vote somehow overrides my property deed? Lady, the only historical usage this land has seen is cow manure and sweat. Nobody hikes here. The nervous man cleared his throat. Actually, I've walked through your eastern woods many times. It's quite lovely. I turned my gaze on him. He shrank back. You walked through my woods? Well, yes. The view is... That's trespassing. I said flatly. You were trespassing. And if you do it again, I'll have you arrested. Margaret cut in, her voice taking on that sugary, condescending tone parents use with toddlers. Oh, Jack, may I call you Jack? I think you're confused. Once incorporated, the concept of trespassing doesn't apply to community members. This fosters unity. We're giving you the privilege of sharing this beautiful space with your neighbors. I don't want unity, I said, stepping off the porch. I saw them flinch. Good. I want to be left alone. This is private property. It is not part of your HOA. I never signed anything. I never agreed to anything. Margaret sighed, the sound of a martyr dealing with a stubborn child. The community decided, Jack. It's democratic. The vote was unanimous. A vote among yourselves, I countered. You voted to steal my land. That's not democracy, Margaret. That's theft. Her lips pursed so tight, they practically disappeared. Let me put this plainly, Mr. Monroe. The paperwork has been filed with the county. The maps have been updated. This ranch is now under HOA jurisdiction. Resistance will only result in fines. Heavy fines. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the expensive way. She stared at me, expecting me to crumble. People usually did when she threw the word fines around. But looking at her smug, entitled face, I didn't feel fear. I felt a cold, hard resolve settling in my gut. Get off my property, I said quietly. Excuse me? You have 5 seconds to turn around. Get back in your beige little tank and drive away before I call the sheriff and report 3 intruders. Margaret scoffed. You wouldn't dare. We are official representatives of 1. I counted. She blinked, realizing I wasn't bluffing. The nervous man was already backing away. 2. We will escalate this, she snapped, her voice cracking. You will be hearing from our legal team. 3. She spun on her heel, marching back to the car with as much dignity as she could muster, which wasn't much. The board members scurried after her like anxious ducklings as they peeled out of the driveway, kicking up dust that settled on my freshly washed truck. I knew this wasn't over. Margaret wasn't just a neighbor. She was a conqueror in a cardigan. She thought she had won because she had a clipboard and a sense of entitlement. But as I watched her car disappear down the road, I realized she had made a fatal error. She thought my land was just a green space. She didn't know it was a fortress, and she had just declared war on the wrong rancher. The dust from Margaret's sedan hadn't even settled before the real nightmare began. I thought I'd bought myself a few days, maybe a week, while she ran back to her clubhouse to draft angry emails. I was wrong. Margaret didn't wait for legal confirmation. She worked on the speed of gossip. About 2 hours after she left, I was in the barn fixing a hydraulic line on my tractor when I heard it. Voices. Not the ambient sounds of nature, but the distinct, high-pitched chatter of people who didn't belong. I wiped the grease off my hands and walked out into the sunlight. My jaw literally dropped. A silver SUV was parked halfway up my driveway. The doors were flung open, and a family of 4 was spilling out like a clown car act. A mom in yoga pants, a dad in a polo shirt, 2 kids screaming with joy, and, I kid you not, a golden retriever trotting ahead like he owned the deed to the place. What the hell? I muttered, breaking into a jog. The dad had a frisbee in his hand. He wound up and launched it. The red plastic disc sailed through the air and landed perfectly in my feeding trough. Hey! I shouted. My voice boomed across the field. The family froze. The dad looked at me, shielding his eyes from the sun, blinking like I was the one who had interrupted his afternoon. Whoa! Hey there, buddy, he called out, smiling. Great day for it, huh? I marched up to them, stopping just short getting the guy's face. What do you think you're doing? The dad looked confused. He pointed at the frisbee. Just playing catch with the kids. We heard the new park open up today. Park. I pointed at the barbed wire fence 20 yards away. Does this look like a park to you? This is a working cattle ranch. That is a feeding trough. And you are trespassing. The mom stepped forward, adjusting her sunglasses. She had that, I'm about to speak to the manager, stance. Excuse me, sir. There's no need to be rude. We saw the announcement on the HOA app. Margaret sent out a blast this morning. Willow Creek Nature Preserve is now open for recreational use. It even had a map. She held up her phone. I snatched it out of her hand. Rude, maybe, but I was past caring and looked at the screen. There it was. A professionally designed digital map of my land, labeled with fake trails like Sunset Loop and Meadow Walk. It marked my barn as a historic landmark and my driveway as public parking. My blood boiled. It was hotter than the engine block I'd just been working on. The app is lying, I said, handing the phone back. Margaret, this is private property. It has always been private property. Now get your dog, get your kids, and get out. The dad bristled. Now hold on a minute. We pay our HOA dues. We have a right to use community amenities. You can't just hoard all this land to yourself. Hoard? I laughed, a dangerous, low sound. I bought this land. I pay taxes on this land. The only thing I'm hoarding is my patience, and I'm running out of it fast. We're not leaving, the mom declared, crossing her arms. We have a right to be here. If you have a problem, take it up with the board. I looked at them. They weren't bad people, probably. They were just NPCs, non-playable characters in Margaret's game. They believed the app because the app felt official. They believed the lie because it was convenient for them. They wanted a park, so they accepted the reality where my ranch was a park. Okay, I said calmly. You're right. I should take it up with the board. But since the board isn't here, I'll use my own method of dispute resolution. I walked over to the side of the barn and grabbed the industrial-grade garden hose. It wasn't a little green sprinkler hose. This was a heavy-duty, high-pressure hose used for cleaning muck out of stalls. I twisted the nozzle. The dad's eyes widened. Hey, what are you doing? Watering my lawn. I said, you're standing on it. I didn't spray them directly. Not yet. I aimed at the ground right in front of their feet. The blast of cold water kicked up mud and dirt, splattering their pristine white sneakers. Ah, my shoes, the mom shrieked, jumping back. You're crazy, the dad yelled, grabbing the kids. I'm irrigating. I shouted over the roar of the water. You might want to move. This is an agricultural zone. Things get wet. They scrambled. It was a chaotic retreat. The dog barked. The kids cried, and the parents dragged them back to the SUV, slipping on the wet grass. As they peeled out of the driveway, the dad shouted something about a lawsuit, but I couldn't hear him over the sound of my own satisfaction. I turned the water off. My heart was pounding, but I didn't have time to recover. 10 minutes later, a minivan pulled up, a group of teenagers with a drone. 20 minutes after that, an elderly couple with hiking poles. Then a guy with a metal detector. Margaret had weaponized the entire neighborhood. She hadn't just claimed my land. She had invited the world to invade it. By 2 p.m., I felt like a bouncer at the world's worst nightclub. I had turned away 5 cars, shouted at a yoga group trying to set up mats in my hayfield, and confiscated a drone that was buzzing my cows. I realized then that this wasn't just a dispute. This was a siege. Margaret knew she couldn't legally take the land, so she was trying to create a de facto ownership. If enough people use the land, if enough people walk the trails, it will become community property through sheer usage. It was a strategy called adverse possession on steroids, accelerated by social media and entitlement. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Every car, every license plate, every person. I needed evidence. Around 4 p.m., the final straw broke the camel's back. I saw Margaret's white Lexus drive slowly past my gate. She didn't stop. She didn't look at me. She just drove by, surveying the chaos she caused, probably smiling behind those oversized sunglasses. She was checking to see if I had broken yet. She wanted me to explode, to do something illegal, to give her footage she could use to paint me as a dangerous, unhinged neighbor who needed to be removed. I watched her car disappear and felt a cold shift in my chest. Okay, Margaret, I whispered to the empty road. You want to play games? You want to use the neighborhood as your pawns. I walked back to the house, ignoring the confused look of a delivery driver who was trying to find the clubhouse annex, which was apparently now my garage. I went straight to my office and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Curtis Law Firm. How may I direct your call? Put me through to Curtis, I said. Tell him Jack Monroe is on the line. Tell him the HOA just tried to steal the ranch. There was a pause, and then the receptionist's voice changed. Hold on, Jack. He's gonna want to hear this. Curtis wasn't just a lawyer. He was a shark who ate other sharks for breakfast. He hated HOAs more than he hated losing. And as the phone rang, I grabbed a pen and a notepad. I wasn't just going to defend my land. I was going to make sure that by the time this was over, the Willow Creek HOA would wish they had never even learned how to spell the word Monroe. The war had officially begun, and I needed ammunition. The phone rang exactly twice before Curtis picked up. That's the thing about Curtis. For a man who charges $500 an hour, he's surprisingly accessible when he smells blood in the water. And nothing smells quite like blood to a lawyer than an HOA overstepping its boundaries by about 50 acres. Jack. His voice came through the speaker, smooth and bored, sounding like he was swirling a glass of scotch even though I knew it was 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. To what do I owe the pleasure? Did you finally punch a cow? Or are you calling to tell me you've been arrested? Worse. I said, pacing my kitchen floor, adrenaline still humming in my veins. The HOA just declared my ranch is now a public park. They're calling it the Willow Creek Nature Preserve. There was a silence on the other end. A long, heavy silence. Then, I heard a sound I didn't expect. Curtis started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but a deep, belly-shaking laugh that probably startled his secretary. A park, he wheezed. Jack, please tell me you're joking. They annexed your ranch? Without a deed transfer? Without a sale? Without, I assume, your permission? Margaret Dawson showed up with a clipboard and told me it was based on historical community usage. I said, my voice tight. Then she sent a brigade of minivans, hikers, and a guy with a smoker onto my property. I spent the last 6 hours chasing people off like I'm playing whack-a-mole with suburbanites. The laughter stopped instantly. The tone of his voice dropped an octave, shifting from amused friend to lethal attorney. Listen to me very carefully, Jack. This isn't just annoying. This is actionable fraud. It's slander of title. It's interference with property rights. It's a dozen different torts wrapped in a nice little bow. He paused, and I could practically hear his brain clicking into gear. But here's the problem. If you just sue them, it'll take 2 years. They'll drag it out. They'll use HOA dues to pay for their defense. You'll win, but you'll be miserable. So what do? I asked. I can't have strangers picnicking in my hayfields for 2 years, Curtis. No, Curtis said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. You fight dirty. You fight legally, but you fight dirty. We need a two-pronged attack. The shield and the sword. I'm listening. The sword is me, Curtis explained. I need you to go to the county recorder's office right now. If Margaret claims the land is annexed, she had to file something. Bureaucracy doesn't run on wishes. It runs on paper. Find out what she filed. I bet my law license she forged something or misrepresented the facts. Find the smoking gun. And the shield. I asked. The shield is you, Curtis said darkly. Jack, if people are trespassing, you have a duty to secure your property. You need a fence. A real one. Not that rustic with stuff you have. You need deterrence. And in this state, as long as it's clearly marked and within voltage limits, an electric fence is a perfectly legal way to keep livestock in and predators out. I froze. An electric fence? For people? For livestock management, Curtis corrected smoothly. If a trespasser happens to touch it while illegally entering your property, well, that's just an unfortunate lesson in physics, isn't it? I hung up the phone with the first genuine smile I'd had all day. The plan was simple, brutal, and beautiful. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the county clerk's office. The building smelled like it always did. Stale coffee, floor wax, and the crushing weight of bureaucracy. The clerk was a young guy named Kevin, who looked like he was vibrating with boredom. He was spinning a pen on his finger when I walked up. Help you? He mumbled, not looking up. I need to see the property jurisdiction records for parcel 51B. I said, sliding a slip of paper across the counter. Specifically, any recent filings regarding HOA annexation or boundary adjustments. Kevin sighed, typed something into a computer with agonizing slowness, and then frowned. He squinted at the screen. Yeah, looks like there was an update process 3 weeks ago. Community integration requests. Can I see the source document? He disappeared into the back room. I stood there, tapping my fingers on the counter, watching the clock on the wall tick. Every second felt like an hour. Had she really done it? Had she really found a loophole? 5 minutes later, Kevin returned with a file folder. He opened it and slid a photocopy toward me. I looked down and my blood ran cold. It was a standard form, request for boundary adjustment and community easement. It was filled out in neat, bubbly handwriting, Margaret's handwriting. It listed my property, my acreage, and even my tax ID number. But it was the bottom of the page that made me see red. Under the section titled Owner Consent / Authorized Representative. There was a signature. It wasn't my signature. It wasn't my grandfather's signature. It was signed. Margaret Dawson, HOA President, acting on behalf of community interests. And right below that, in a box she checked herself, was a clause that read, Owner has been notified and has raised no objections to historical designation. She hadn't just bent the rules. She had committed fraud. She had looked a government official in the face, or at least a form, and lied, claiming she had the authority to sign away my land rights because I hadn't objected to a notification I never received. I pulled out my phone. I need a certified copy of this, I told Kevin, and I need it now. It's 50 cents a page, Kevin said dull. Here's a 20. I slapped the bill on the counter. Keep the change. I walked out of that office, clutching the certified copy like a weapon. Margaret Dawson had just handed me the sword. Now, I needed to build the shield. I didn't go home. I drove straight to Big Ray's Farm and Feed Supply. This was in the cute garden center where the HOA bought their petunias. This was where serious ranchers bought serious equipment. The place smelled like fertilizer and diesel. I grabbed a flatbed cart and marched to aisle 12. Fencing and security. I didn't hold back. I loaded up spools of high-tensile galvanized wire. I grabbed a yellow and black warning, high-voltage signs, a stack of 50. I bought grounding rods, insulators, and then the piece de resistance, the Thundershock 5000 Energizer unit. The box claimed it delivered a safe but memorable pulse designed for stubborn bulls and determined bears. I figured if it could stop a 2,000-pound bull, it could probably deter a woman in a polyester blazer. As I was loading the cart, an old rancher I knew, Mr. Henderson, walked by. He eyed my cart, then eyed me. "Got a coyote problem, Jack?" he asked, nodding at the excessive amount of voltage in my cart. "Something like that," I said, throwing a box of heavy-duty zip ties on top. "More like a pest problem. Invasive species. They wear yoga pants and ignore property lines." Mr. Henderson chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. "Ah, the HOA. Heard they were eyeing your north pasture." "They stopped eyeing it," I said, pushing the heavy car toward the checkout. "Now, they're trying to swallow it. I'm just about to give them a case of indigestion." I drove home with the bed of my truck, weighed down by steel and electricity. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the fields. The park. Visitors had mostly gone home for dinner, leaving behind tire tracks in my grass and a few stray candy wrappers. I parked the truck near the main gate. I looked at the house, my grandfather's house, and then at the boundary line where Margaret had stood earlier that day, lecturing me about unity. She wanted a park? Fine. I'd give her a park. I'd give her the most exclusive, high-security, electrifying park in the state. I spent the rest of the night mapping out the perimeter. I wasn't just going to put up a fence. I was going to build a fortress. Curtis had given me the green light. The law was on my side. The document in my pocket proved she was a fraud. But before I unleashed the lawyers, I wanted to see the look on her face when her nature preserve bit back. I went to sleep that night not with anxiety, but with anticipation. I slept like a baby. The kind of baby that knows exactly where the bear trap is hidden and is just waiting for someone to step on it. Tomorrow, the construction would begin. And Margaret? She wouldn't even see it coming. The next morning, the sun hadn't even breached the horizon when I started. The air was crisp, smelling of damp earth and determination. While the rest of the neighborhood was sleeping, dreaming of their HOA-approved color palettes and manicured lawns, I was already digging. There's something meditative about building a fence. It's hard, honest work. You dig the hole, you set the post, you tamp the dirt. It's a rhythm. Thump, scrape, pack. Thump, scrape, pack. With every strike of the post hole digger, I felt like I was reclaiming a piece of my sanity. Margaret thought she could take this land with signature. I was going to hold it with steel and sweat. I worked methodically. I wasn't just patching up the old wooden rails. I was running a new perimeter inside the property line. I drove in fiberglass step-in posts, hundreds of them, creating a bright, obvious barrier. Then came the wire. High tensile, galvanized steel, gleaming in the morning light. I strung it at 3 heights, ankle for the dogs, hip for the kids, and chest for the adults. By 10 a.m., the physical barrier was done, but the real weapon was still in the box. I was mounting the Thundershock 5000 Energizer unit to the side of the barn when I heard the crunch of gravel. I didn't even look up. I knew that sound. It wasn't a minivan this time. It was too heavy, too smooth. I turned slowly. A black sedan had parked near the gate. It was sleek, polished, and radiated an aura of expensive billable hours. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a man who looked like he had been 3D printed in a corporate boardroom. Perfect suit, perfect hair, and a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. He adjusted his glasses as he looked at me, then at the mud on my boots. "Mr. Monroe?" he called out. His voice was projected, practiced. "Who's asking?" I replied, not moving toward him. I picked up a pair of wire cutters, just for effect. He walked past the no trespassing sign without glancing at it. "I'm Jonathan Burke, legal counsel representing the Willow Creek Homeowners Association." Ah, Margaret's scare tactic. She must have panicked when I kicked her out yesterday. "You're standing on private property, Jonathan," I said calmly. He stopped, offering a tight, condescending smile. "Actually, That is the matter of dispute I'm here to discuss. The HOA board has retained my services to facilitate the transition. Transition? I repeated, walking slowly toward the fence line. Is that the legal term for theft nowadays? Burke sighed, opening his portfolio. He pulled out a document on thick, creamy paper. Mr. Monroe, this is a formal cease and desist. The board has noted your hostile behavior toward community members utilizing the new preserve. We are also aware of your threats regarding livestock barriers. He glanced distastefully at the wire I had just strung. You are ordered to halt any construction that obstructs community access or endangers residents. Failure to comply will result in an immediate injunction. He held the paper out across the fence. I didn't take it. I just looked at him. Let me ask you something, Jonathan. Did you review the title deed before you drove out here? Or did you just take Margaret's word for it? He blinked. The association has provided documentation regarding the annexation. The association provided a fraudulent form signed by Margaret Dawson, not me, I said. My voice dropped, becoming dangerously low. I went to the county clerk yesterday. I have the certified copy. I know she forged a consent. And I know that you, being a lawyer, know exactly what the penalty is for knowingly aiding in property fraud. Burke's hand froze. The paper shook slightly in the breeze. My client assured me the process was procedural, he stammered, the corporate veneer cracking just a little. Your client lied, I said. So here is my counteroffer. You can take that cease and desist and use it to start a fire. Because this fence, it's going up. It's staying up. It is legally compliant, fully permitted for agricultural use, and located entirely on my land. I leaned in, gripping the fence post. And Jonathan, if you or any of your clients step over this wire once it's live, you won't need an injunction. You'll need a burn cream. Burke pulled the paper back. He looked at the wire, then at me, then back at his car. He was a hired gun, not a true believer. He wasn't paid enough to fight a man who looked like he wrestled tractors for fun. I will relay your position to the board, he said stiffly. But I advise you, Mr. Monroe, escalating this is unwise. I'm not escalating. I grinned a sharp, shark-like grin. I'm fortifying. Have a nice drive, Jonathan. He got back in his car and reversed all the way down the driveway, presumably so he wouldn't have to turn his back on me. I watched him go, then turned back to the Energizer unit. Coward, I muttered. I finished the installation by noon. I drove the grounding rod 6 feet deep into the earth. I connected the leads. I hung the yellow warning signs every 20 feet, just like the law required. Warning, electric fence, danger. They were bright and possible to miss. Then, the moment of truth. I flipped the switch on the Thundershock 5000. Click. For a second, nothing happened. Then I heard it, a rhythmic, electric pulse. Snap, snap, snap. It was the heartbeat of my defense system. I took a blade of long grass and held it against the wire, a rancher's trick. Never touch it with your hand. I felt the thump of the voltage travel through the grass stem. It was strong, not lethal. Curtis had been very clear about that, but strong enough to feel like a mule kicked you in the funny bone. It was perfect, but I wasn't done. Curtis had said documentation. I spent the afternoon turning my ranch into a surveillance state. I mounted high-definition trail cameras on the fence posts, camouflaged in birdhouses. I put a wide-angle camera on the barn roof. I set up motion-activated floodlights. If a squirrel sneezed on my property line, I want it recorded in 4K resolution. By sunset, my fortress was complete. I went inside, grabbed a cold beer, and pulled up the camera feeds on my laptop. The screen showed a grid of views covering every inch of perimeter. Around 7 p.m., I saw movement on camera 3. It was Margaret. She was walking her poodle along the county road, stopping just outside my gate. She was squinting at the new wires at the yellow signs. She pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. I zoomed in on the feed. I could see her lips moving. She looked annoyed, dismissive. She probably thought the signs were a bluff. She probably thought the wire was just string. In her world, people didn't actually do things. They just threatened to do things. She thought I was posturing. She pointed at the fence, seemingly explaining to her poodle how ugly it was. She reached out a hand, hovering inches from the wire, pointing a finger of accusation. Touch it, I whispered to the screen. Go ahead, Margaret. Touch it. She didn't. She pulled her hand back, adjusted her scarf, and walked away. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was better this way. If she touched it now, she'd know it was real. She'd warn the others. But because she walked away, she assumed it was fake. She assumed I was just trying to scare them off with props. She was going to tell the neighborhood to ignore the signs. She was going to tell them the fence was just for show. I took a sip of beer and leaned back in my chair. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a bruised purple. Outside, the fence hummed its rhythmic warning in the dark. Snap, snap, snap. Tomorrow was Saturday, the first warm weekend of the month. Margaret had promised the neighborhood a grand opening picnic on the new nature preserve. I looked at the monitor, at the empty field waiting for its victims. Come on in, I said softly. The park is open. Saturday arrived with a kind of aggressively perfect, whether that makes you suspicious. Blue skies, chirping birds, and a gentle breeze. The universe was practically rolling out a red carpet for the disaster that was about to unfold. I was up at 6 a.m., doing my final rounds. I walked the perimeter, checking every insulator, every warning sign, and every connection. The Thundershock 5000 was humming its low, rhythmic tune. Snap, snap, snap. It was the sound of readiness. I positioned my lawn chair on the front porch, brewed a fresh pot of black coffee, and waited. At 10:13 a.m., the invasion force arrived. I've seen military convoys with less coordination. It started with a distant honking of horns, followed by a procession of vehicles that seemed to stretch back to the county line. SUVs, minivans, a few pickup trucks, and, I swear I'm not making this up, a catering van. They pulled into my driveway, ignoring the private property signs I had freshly painted. They parked on the grass. They parked on the gravel. They parked in a way that blocked each other in, creating a Tetris game of stupidity. And leading the charge, stepping out of the passenger seat of her white Lexus like she was disembarking from Air Force One, was Margaret Dawson. She was wearing a wide-brimmed sun hat that was approximately the size of a satellite dish, paired with a pastel pink cardigan and white slacks. She looked like a giant marshmallow that had gained sentience and decided to run for office. In her hand, she clutched a megaphone. I stayed on the porch, sipping my coffee. I didn't yell. I didn't wave my arms. I just watched. Margaret raised the megaphone to her lips. The feedback squeal made half the crowd wince. Attention, neighbors. Welcome, her voice boomed, echoing off my barn. Welcome to the grand opening of the Willow Creek Nature Preserve. Today is a victory for community unity. A cheer went up. It was sickening. People were unloading coolers, folding chairs, volleyball nets, and portable grills. Someone was setting up a badminton court 3 feet from my electric fence. I stood up and walked down the porch steps. I didn't run. I strolled. I stopped about 10 yards from the fence line, safely on my side. Margaret. I called out. She turned, flashing a dazzling, fake smile. Ah, Mr. Monroe. So glad you could join the celebration. I trust you accepted the new arrangement. I'm giving you one warning, I said, my voice calm, but carrying clearly over the chatter. Turn around. Pack up. Leave. This is a private ranch, and that fence is live. Margaret laughed into the megaphone. Oh, Jack. Stop being dramatic. Everyone, listen to me. Mr. Monroe is trying to scare us with props. That fence is just string and plastic. It's a bluff to keep us from enjoying our land. She swept her arm toward the fence. Go on. Set up. Enjoy nature. The crowd hesitated for a split second, looking at the yellow high-voltage signs I had posted every 20 feet. But then they looked at Margaret, their confident leader in the pink hat, and they shrugged. It's fake. A guy in a World's Best Ad t-shirt muttered to his wife. Just a scare tactic. And then the show began. Victim number 1, the jogger. He was a young guy, fit, wearing expensive compression gear and headphones. He was jogging along the perimeter, doing high knees, looking very pleased with himself. He stopped right in front of where I was standing to stretch. He locked eyes with me, smirked, and then, with agonizing slowness, leaned his back against the wire to stretch his hamstrings. Snap. The sound was like a whip cracking. The jogger didn't just jump, he levitated. His eyes went wide as saucers, and he let out a sound that I can only describe as a high-pitched yip. Like a puppy whose tail got stepped on, he launched himself forward, stumbling over his own feet, and face-planted directly into a cooler full of ice. Ah, what the? He scrambled backward, crab-walking away from the fence, clutching his lower back. It bit me. The fence bit me. The crowd fell silent. Margaret lowered her megaphone. Static electricity. Margaret shouted quickly. It's just dry air, everyone. Keep playing. Victim number 2, the retriever. A family had set up a picnic blanket dangerously close to the line. Their kids were kicking a soccer ball around. Inevitably, One of the kids shanked a kick, and the ball rolled right up to the wire. It touched the hot wire. Spook TSSS. A tiny spark jumped. The kid froze. Mommy, the ball sparked. Don't be silly, Tyler, the dad said. He was a big guy, wearing cargo shorts and holding a hot dog. I'll get it. He walked over, confident, annoyed. He reached for the ball, but lost his balance slightly and grabbed the fence post for support. His hand wrapped around the wire. Zap! The Thundershock 5000 lived up to its name. The dad yelled, "Holy mother of..." and jerked his arm back so hard he spun around like a ballerina. His hot dog went airborne. It sailed to the air in a perfect arc and landed in Margaret's open sunroof. He fell onto his butt, staring at his hand, then at the fence, then at me. That's electric," he shouted, his face turning red. He electrocuted me. "I warned you," I called out, taking another sip of coffee. Signs are posted. Private property. Victim number 3, the kite genius. This was the grand finale. By now, panic was starting to ripple through the crowd. People were backing away from the perimeter. But one guy, a teenager trying to impress a girl, had gotten his kite string tangled in the top wire. "I got it, no worries," I heard him say. He didn't reach with his hand. No, he was smarter than that. He picked up a metal grilling fork from a nearby table. "Don't do it, son," I said softly to myself. He reached up with a metal fork to hook the kite string. The metal fork touched the galvanized steel wire. Crack zap. It was loud. The current traveled down the fork, through his arm, and gave him the handshake of a lifetime. He dropped the fork as if it were molten lava. He screamed, did a weird little jig, and ran behind his girlfriend, using her as a human shield. Chaos erupted. It was beautiful. It was absolute, unadulterated pandemonium. Mothers were grabbing children. Dogs were barking at the invisible enemy. A woman dropped a tray of potato salad, creating a mayonnaise slick that caused 2 other people to slip and fall. Margaret was losing control. She was running back and forth along the line, safely 3 feet away, screaming into her megaphone, "Remain calm. It's a malfunction. It's a lawsuit. Jack Monroe, turn this off immediately." I walked up to the fence line, standing safely on my side. I looked her dead in the eye. "No," I said. "This is assault," she shrieked, her face matching her pink cardigan. "You are hurting community members." "I am containing livestock," I corrected. "If your community members stop trying to break into my pasture, they won't get shocked. It's a passive system, Margaret. It only hurts you if you're stupid enough to touch it. I will have the police here in 5 minutes." "Please do," I smiled. "I'd love to show them the trespassing footage." Margaret was vibrating with rage. She turned to the crowd, trying to rally them. "Everyone, do not let him bully us. We need to stand our ground. Form a human chain." She reached out to grab the arm of the guy who had been shocked by the hot dog incident. "Sir, stand with me." "Don't touch me," the guy yelled, swatting her away. "You said it was safe. You said it was a park." I nearly stopped my pacemaker. "She's crazy," the jogger yelled, rubbing his back. "Let's get out of here." The tide turned instantly. The mob mentality that Margaret had used against me for weeks suddenly flipped and targeted her. They weren't angry at the fence anymore. They were angry at the woman who told them the fence wasn't real. "Let's go, kids," a mom shouted, dragging her cooler. "This is unsafe." "I'm calling the board," someone else yelled. "My potato salad is ruined," the salad lady wailed. Margaret stood alone in the swirling dust of the retreat. Cars were revving. People were throwing their gear into trunks without even folding it. The catering van backed up so fast it knocked over the grand opening sign, crushing it into the mud. In less than 10 minutes, the driveway was empty. All that remained were tire tracks, a spilled tub of potato salad, a lost frisbee, and Margaret. She stood there, staring at the empty drive, then at me. Her hat was crooked. Her clipboard hung limp at her side. "You think you've won," she hissed, her voice trembling not with fear, but with pure, undiluted malice. "You have no idea what you've just done. I will bury you in litigation. I will take this ranch and turn it into a parking lot." I leaned against a fence post, the wooden part. "Margaret, look up." She frowned. "What?" I pointed to the birdhouse on the post, right next to her. The camera lens glinted in the sun. "Smile," I said. "You're on the highlight reel." Her face went pale. She realized in that moment that everything, her speech, her denial of the danger, the shocks, the panic, had been recorded. She didn't say another word. She turned, walked to her Lexus, and got in. She slammed the door, so hard I fell in the ground. As she drove away, a piece of lettuce from the airborne hot dog slid down her windshield. I watched her go, then poured the rest of my coffee onto the grass. I went back inside and checked the footage. It was better than I could have imagined. The jogger's jump, Olympic quality. The hot dog launch, majestic. I saved a video file and named it the _shocking_truth.mp4. The physical battle was won. My fence held. The invaders were repelled. But as I watched Margaret's car disappear, I knew the real war was just shifting fronts. She wouldn't attack the land again. Now, she would attack my wallet. My phone buzzed. It was Curtis. "Jack," he said, sounding like a kid on Christmas. "Tell me you got footage." "I got everything," I said. "Good," Curtis replied, "because phase 2 starts now. They're going to sue you for injury and negligence. And when they do, we're going to hit them with the financial nuclear bomb we talked about. Are you ready to bankrupt an HOA? I looked at the screen, paused on the frame of the guy's hot dog hitting Margaret's car. "Curtis," I said. I was born ready. Sunday passed in a strange, fragile silence. Monday, however, brought the paper storm. I was finishing breakfast when a generic sedan pulled up. Not an HOA car, not a minivan, but the distinct, nondescript vehicle of a process server. A man in a rumpled suit walked up to my porch, verified my identity, handed me a thick envelope, and left without making eye contact. I opened it on the kitchen table. It was a lawsuit. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association versus Jack Monroe. The list of accusations was impressive, bordering on creative fiction. They were suing me for public nuisance, for creating an eyesore on my fence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, for the trauma caused to the picnic goers, negligence, for failing to provide a safe environment on community-accessible land, unlawful obstruction, for blocking access to the Willow Creek Nature Preserve. They were asking for an emergency injunction to remove the fence and damages totaling $50,000. Margaret wasn't just trying to win. She was trying to bleed me dry. I picked up the phone and called Curtis. "I got served," I said. "Good," Curtis replied, sounding like he was smiling. "Bring it in. It's time to launch the nukes." An hour later, I was sitting in Curtis's office. It was a corner office with mahogany furniture and a view of the city. The kind of office that whispered, "We destroy people for a living." Curtis flipped through the lawsuit, humming to himself. "Standard bullying tactics," he muttered. "They're relying on the assumption that you'll be too scared of the legal fees to fight. They want a settlement. They want you to say, 'Fine, keep the land, just leave me alone.'" He tossed the paperwork onto his desk. "But they made a fatal mistake, Jack. Which is, in order to sue you for obstruction of community land, they have to legally assert that the land is community property. They are doubling down on the claim that this annexation is valid and retroactive based on historical use." Curtis leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "So, we're going to agree with them." I frowned. "We're going to what?" "We're going to accept their premise," Curtis said, pulling out a fresh legal pad. "We will state that, for the sake of argument, the HOA is correct. The land has been community property for the last 20 years, dating back to when your grandfather first let the neighbors walk their dogs there." He started writing furiously. "And if the HOA owns the land or has jurisdiction over the land, then the HOA is responsible for the maintenance of the land." It clicked. A slow grin spread across my face. "I've been maintaining it," I said. "Exactly," Curtis pointed. "You've been mowing it. You've been repairing the fences. You've been removing fallen trees. You've been paying for pest control. You've been paying the property taxes. Effectively, you've been an unpaid contractor for the Willow Creek HOA for 2 decades. Curtis turned his laptop screen toward me. He had a spreadsheet open. "We are going to send them a counter-demand. We are invoicing them for services rendered. Let's run the numbers. Professional landscaping for 50 acres? That's roughly $800 a month. Security services? $500 a month. Fence repair? Waste management? Liability insurance reimbursement." He tapped the keys. The number at the bottom of the screen climbed higher and higher. "And don't forget interest," Curtis added wickedly. "Compound interest for unpaid invoices dating back to 2004. The final number sat on the screen, bold and beautiful. $212,450. "This," Curtis said, printing the document, "is what we call a poison pill. If they want the land, they have to pay the bill. If they refuse to pay the bill, they have to admit in court that the land isn't theirs." He handed me the freshly printed folder. It was heavy. It felt like a brick. Deliver it yourself, Curtis said. I want to hear about the look on her face. I drove straight to the HOA office. It was located in a small annex attached to the community clubhouse, a building that smelled of lemon cleaner and desperation. Margaret was there, of course. She was sitting behind her desk, aggressively typing on her keyboard. She looked up when I walked in, and for a split second, I saw fear. But she buried it quickly under a layer of smugness. Mr. Monroe, she said, leaning back, I assume you're here to discuss the settlement terms? I hope you're ready to remove that fence. Actually, I said, my voice calm and pleasant, I'm here to agree with you. Margaret blinked. Excuse me? You're right, Margaret. I've been thinking about it. If the community wants a land so bad, maybe it should be community land. Her eyes lit up. She hadn't expected this. She thought she had broken me. Well, I'm glad you've finally seen reason, Jack. It's for the greater good. Agreed, I said. And since we agree that the land is and historically has been under HOA jurisdiction, we just need to settle the administrative side of things. I dropped the thick folder onto her desk. Thud. What is this? She asked, reaching for it. That, I said, is the invoice. Invoice for what? Maintenance. I explained, leaning against the doorframe. You see, Margaret, since the HOA claims historical jurisdiction over my 50 acres, that means the HOA has been legally responsible for its upkeep for the last 20 years. But I was the one who paid for the mowing, the tree trimming, the fertilization, the fencing, and the security. Margaret froze, her hand halfway to opening the folder. I've spoken to my lawyer. I continued. We're willing to transfer the title, provided the HOA reimburses me for the sunk cost of maintaining your park. It's only fair, right? You can't expect a private citizen to subsidize a public park for free. She opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. I watched the color drain from her face in real time. It started at her forehead and washed down to her neck, leaving her looking like a sheet of paper. She whispered. $212,000. And $450, I corrected, plus legal fees. We accept check or wire transfer. Net 30 terms. This is insane, she sputtered, looking up at me. We don't have this kind of money. The reserve fund is only $40,000. That sounds like a you problem, Margaret. I said coldly. You filed the paperwork claiming the land. You sued me claiming jurisdiction. You bought the cow. Now you have to buy the milk. I can't pay this. Then you have two choices, I said, stepping closer. Choice A. You pay me $212,000. Which means you'll have to levy a special assessment on every homeowner in this neighborhood. You'll have to explain to 200 families why they each owe an extra $1,000 this month because you wanted a park. Margaret flinched. She knew exactly what would happen if she tried to tax the neighbors that much. They would riot. Or choice B, I continued. You publicly admit, in writing, that the annexation was fraudulent, that the land is mine, and you drop the lawsuit immediately. She stared at the paper, her hands shaking. She was trapped. If she fought, she bankrupted the HOA. If she folded, she lost her nature preserve and her pride. Get out, she whispered. I'll wait for your check, I said cheerfully. Oh, and Margaret, I'm going to post a copy of this invoice on the community bulletin board, just so the neighbors know what their dues are paying for. You wouldn't dare, she gasped. Watch me. I walked out of the office, leaving her staring at the number that would end her career. I didn't stop at the bulletin board. I went a step further. I went to the community mailbox center, the place where everyone stopped on their way home from work. I taped a copy of the proposed invoice right next to the HOA newsletter. I grabbed a bright red marker and circled the total, $212,450. Underneath, I wrote in big block letters, cost of Margaret's new park, estimated special assessment per household, $1,200, due next month. Then I drove home, sat on my porch, and waited. It took about 2 hours. At 5:30 p.m., the first car started pulling into the neighborhood. People got out to check their mail. I saw them stop. I saw them lean in to read the flyer. I saw the shock, then the confusion, then the anger. Phones started coming out. People were taking pictures of the flyer. Groups started forming. I could see the frantic hand gestures. $1, 200? Are you kidding me? Margaret thought the electric fence was a problem? She had no idea. I had just electrified her bank account. The mutiny wasn't coming. It was here, and I had a front row seat. There's a universal truth about homeowners associations that most people forget. The only thing neighbors care about more than their property values is their bank account balances. You can annoy them with rules about trash cans. You can irritate them with color palettes. But the moment you threaten to reach into their pockets and take $1,000, you don't just get a complaint. You get a revolution. The morning after I posted the invoice on the bulletin board, the neighborhood felt different. The air was charged. It wasn't the aggressive energy of the picnic invasion. It was the frantic, buzzing energy of a hive that had just been kicked. I was in my driveway, leisurely polishing the chrome on my truck, when the first defector approached. It was Derek. He lived 3 houses down. Quiet guy, drove a sensible sedan, probably paid his dues early every month to avoid conflict. He walked up my driveway looking like he was approaching a bomb disposal unit. He held a crumpled photo of my invoice on his phone. "Jack," he said, stopping 10 feet away. He glanced nervously at my electric fence, which was humming happily. "Morning, Derek." I said, dipping a rag in wax. "Don't touch the wire." I know, he said quickly. He held up his phone. "Is this real? This $212,000 figure?" I stopped polishing. I looked him dead in the eye. "It's 100% real, Derek. It's based on 20 years of documented maintenance costs, indexed for inflation plus liability insurance. My lawyer drafted it." Derek swallowed hard. And the special assessment? The $1,200 per house. Well, I shrugged. The HOA doesn't have $212,000 in the bank, do they? If Margaret insists that my land belongs to the community, then the community has to pay for its upkeep. That money has to come from somewhere. That somewhere is you guys. Derek's face went pale. "I can't afford $1,200 right now. We just paid for braces for my daughter. My wife will kill me." "I get it," I said sympathetically. "It's a lot of money. But look on the bright side. Margaret gets her park." "I don't give a damn about the park." Derek snapped. The sudden anger surprised even him. "I never asked for a park. I have a backyard. I don't want to pay $1,000 so Margaret can birdwatch." "Then you should probably tell her that," I suggested. Derek nodded, his jaw set in a hard line. He turned around and marched back down the driveway. He wasn't walking like a scared neighbor anymore. He was walking like a man who was about to make a very loud phone call. That was the spark. By noon, the fire was raging. I didn't have access to the neighborhood Facebook group. I had been banned years ago for refusing to join the holiday decorating committee, but I didn't need to see the post to know what was happening. I could hear it. Neighbors were gathering in driveways. I saw people standing in clusters on the sidewalk, pointing at the bulletin board, then pointing at Margaret's house. The usual NPC wave, the mindless agreement with authority, was breaking. Around 2 p.m., I decided to pour a little gasoline on the fire. I drove my truck down to the community mailbox center. As I expected, a small crowd had gathered around the flyer I posted. Margaret was there, too. She was frantically trying to scrape the tape off the glass case to remove the flyer, but I had used industrial-grade duct tape. It wasn't budging. "It's a lie." Margaret was shouting to a woman in yoga pants. The same woman who had yelled at me about the park days ago. "Jack is just trying to scare you. The legal team assures me we can win." "Win what, Margaret?" The yoga woman snapped. "The right to pay his landscaping bills? He has receipts. My husband says if he countersues, we're liable for everything. It won't come to that." Margaret insisted, her fingernails scratching uselessly against the glass. "It's a negotiation tactic." I rolled down my window as I idled by. "Hey, Margaret," I called out cheerfully. The whole group turned. Margaret looked like she wanted to throw a brick at me. "Just a heads up," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I spoke to my lawyer again. "We forgot to include the cost of the barn roof repair from 2018. That's another $15,000. You might want to update the budget." A collective gasp went through the crowd. "15,000? A man in a polo shirt shouted. "That's another $100 a person." "Jack, stop it!" Margaret shrieked. "You are disrupting the peace." "I'm just being transparent about community finances." I smiled. "I'd hate for you to blindside your constituents." I rolled up the window and drove off slowly. In my rearview mirror, I saw the man in the polo shirt step forward and start pointing a finger in Margaret's face. She was backing up against the mailbox, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. The mutiny had officially begun. By evening, the tide had turned completely. My phone, which had been silent for years regarding neighborhood matters, started buzzing with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. "Jack, this is Sarah from 4B. Is there any way to stop the lawsuit?" "Hey, it's Mike. If we vote her out, does the debt go away? Mr. Monroe, I'm sorry about the picnic. Please don't sue us. They were terrified, and in their terror, they realized something crucial. I wasn't the enemy. The electric fence wasn't the enemy. The invoice wasn't even the enemy. Margaret was the enemy. She was the one driving the car off the cliff. I was just the guy pointing out that the fall would be expensive. Around 6 p.m., Curtis called me. Jack, he said, you're not going to believe this. Try me? Margaret's lawyer, Mr. Fancy Suit Burke, just called me. He wants to know if we'd be willing to enter mediation to discuss a mutual withdrawal of claims. I laughed. He's blinking. He's not just blinking, Curtis said. He's panicking. Apparently, his firm has been getting phone calls all afternoon. Not from Margaret, from the other homeowners. They're threatening to sue the HOA board for breach of fiduciary duty if they pursue this land grab and incur the debt. Breach of fiduciary duty. I rolled the words around in my mouth. That sounds expensive. It is, Curtis said. It means the neighbors are realizing that Margaret is gambling with their money, and they want her to fold. Don't settle, I said firmly. Not yet. Oh, I know, Curtis replied. I told Burke that we would only consider mediation if the HOA admits full liability and pays the first installment of the maintenance debt by Friday. You didn't. I did. Burke sounded like he was going to cry. I hung up and walked out to my porch. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the ranch. My electric fence hummed its steady rhythm. The nature preserve was empty. No hikers, no dogs, no drones, just my land. But the silence was broken by a commotion down the street. I looked toward the community clubhouse. Lights were blazing. Cars were pulling into the lot. More cars than I'd ever seen for a Tuesday night. People were walking fast, looking agitated. I checked my phone. A text from Derek. Emergency board meeting called. 8 p.m. Margaret is trying to save her job. You should come. I smiled. Margaret wanted a meeting? She wanted to address the community? She had spent weeks dragging me into her world, forcing me to play by her rules, use her forms, fight on her turf. Now, she was cornered in her own castle, surrounded by the very peasants she had tried to weaponize against me. I went inside and changed. I didn't put on a suit. I put on my work boots, my cleanest jeans, and a flannel shirt. I wasn't going there as a lawyer or a politician. I was going there as the rancher. I grabbed the certified folder from the county clerk, the one with her forged signature. Margaret thought the electric fence was painful. She was about to learn that the truth hurts a whole lot more. I walked to my truck. It was time to crash the party. The Willow Creek Community Clubhouse was built to hold 50 people comfortably. Tonight, there were at least 100 crammed inside. When I walked to the double doors, the air hit me first, hot, stale, and smelling of cheap coffee and expensive anxiety. Every chair was taken. People were standing along the back walls, sitting on windowsills and crowding the aisles. It looked less like a neighborhood meeting and more like a tribunal. The noise was deafening. 100 separate arguments were happening at once. Neighbors were waving copies of my invoice in each other's faces. Someone was shouting about property values. Someone else was yelling about the special assessment. And at the front of the room, behind a folding table draped in a cheap plastic tablecloth, sat the board. Derek looked like he wanted to vomit. The treasurer, a woman named Linda, was staring at her hands. And in the center, gripping the gavel like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality, was Margaret. She looked bad. The perfectly coiffed hair was fraying at the edges. Her makeup was a little too heavy, trying to hide the stress lines, but her eyes were still defiant. She was scanning the room, looking for enemies, looking for control. Then she saw me. The room went quiet. It was a ripple effect, starting from the back and rolling forward until the only sound was the hum of the vending machine in the corner. Margaret stood up. Her microphone squealed. Mr. Monroe, she said, her voice tight and high. This is a closed meeting for Willow Creek HOA members only. You are not a member. Please leave, or I will have you removed. I didn't stop walking. I strode down the center aisle, my boots heavy on the linoleum floor. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. Actually, Margaret, I said, my voice projecting clearly without a microphone. According to the paperwork you filed with the county 3 weeks ago, my ranch is now fully integrated community property. That makes me a resident, and that makes me a voting member. I reached the front row and took an empty seat right in the center. I crossed my legs and smiled. Unless, of course, you want to admit right now that the annexation was illegal? In which case I'll leave and take my lawsuit with me. The room held its breath. Margaret opened her mouth, then closed it. She was trapped in her own trap. If she kicked me out, she admitted the land wasn't hers. If she let me stay, she let the fox into the hen house. Fine, she hissed, sitting back down. Let the record show that Mr. Monroe is present as a probationary observer. She banged the gavel. Order, order. The room settled into a hostile silence. We are here, Margaret began, trying to summon her usual authoritative tone, to address the malicious rumors and scare tactics being spread regarding the Nature Preserve project. It's not a rumor. If I got a bill for $1,200, a man in the back shouted, that bill is a fabrication. Margaret snapped. Mr. Monroe is trying to intimidate us. The HOA is not liable for his maintenance costs. We have legal counsel working on this right now. Your legal counsel, I spoke up from my seat, not bothering Stan, is currently begging my lawyer for a settlement because he knows you're going to lose. That is a lie. Margaret shrieked. You are bluffing. You think you can walk in here and hold this community hostage? No, Margaret, I said, standing up slowly. I think you held this community hostage. You made a unilateral decision to annex private property without a vote from the homeowners. You incurred a massive financial liability without consulting the treasurer, and you lied to every single person in this room about the legality of the process. I walked toward the table. The other board members shrank back, distancing themselves from Margaret. I did what was best for Willow Creek, Margaret argued, her face flushing red. I secured 50 acres of beautiful land for our families, for our children, and I did it legally. Legally? I repeated. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the certified folder from the county clerk. This, I said, holding it up in the room to see, is the request for boundary adjustment that Margaret filed. Margaret's eyes locked onto the folder. She stopped breathing. In order to annex land, I explained to the crowd, the HOA needs two things, a majority vote from the board and the written consent of the landowner. I turned to Derek. Derek, did the board vote on this specific form? Derek looked at Margaret, then at the angry mob, then at me. No, he whispered. She told us it was just a preliminary inquiry. She never showed us the final filing. The crowd murmured, strike one. And the second requirement, I continued, turning back to Margaret. Owner consent. Margaret, did I sign this form? She stared at me, her lips trembling. Implied consent was established through... Did I sign it? I asked, my voice hard as iron. I acted as a community proxy, she yelled, slamming her hand on the table. You wouldn't listen to reason. I had to do it for the greater good. So you forged it, I said. I opened the folder to the signature page. I walked over the first row and held it up. Look at this, I said. Section 4, owner's signature. It's signed Margaret Dawson on behalf of community interests. And right here, she checked the box that says, owner has been notified and holds no objections. I turned back to the room. She didn't just lie to you. She committed fraud. She filed a falsified legal document with the county government. That's a felony. And because she did it as the HOA president, you're all liable for her criminal defense fees unless you cut her loose. The explosion was instant. Fraud, a woman screamed. You committed fraud in our name? I'm not paying for your lawyer. Margaret. Resign. Get out. Margaret stood up, knocking her chair over. You don't understand. He's the villain here. He electrified a child. I electrified a trespasser. I shot back, and I did it to protect my property, something you clearly don't respect. I turned to the rest of the board. Derek and Linda were looking at Margaret like she was radioactive. Derek, I said calmly, Linda, you have a choice right now. You can stand with her, and when I file the criminal charges tomorrow, your names will be on the lawsuit as accomplices. Or, I pointed at the gavel, you can do your job. Derek stood up. He was shaking, but he looked determined. He looked at Margaret, who was panting, looking wildly around the room for an ally. She found none. Derek's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. I moved for an immediate vote of no confidence regarding the president. Second, Linda shouted, almost jumping out her seat. All in favor? Derek asked the room. It wasn't just a vote. It was a roar. Every hand in the room shot up. People were standing on chairs to raise their hands. It was unanimous. It was absolute. Derek turned to Margaret. The motion passes. You are removed from the board, effective immediately. Margaret stood there, frozen, Her power, her title, her identity. It was all stripped away in 10 seconds. She looked at the crowd, at the people she had ruled over with petty fines and passive-aggressive emails for years. They weren't afraid of her anymore. They were disgusted. She looked at me. "You ruined everything," she whispered. "No, Margaret," I said, leaning in close so only she could hear. "I just turned on the lights. You're the one who couldn't handle what they revealed." She grabbed her purse. She didn't grab the gavel. She turned and ran, actually ran out the side door. The heavy metal door slammed shut behind her, echoing through the room. For a moment, there was silence. Then someone started clapping. Then someone else. Soon, the whole room was applauding. It wasn't a celebration of victory. It was a relief of liberation. Derek slumped back into his chair, looking exhausted. He looked at me. "So," Derek said into the microphone, "does this mean you're dropping the lawsuit?" I smiled. The room went quiet again, waiting for my answer. "The lawsuit for the $212,000? I asked. "That depends." "On what?" "On who you pick as the next president," I said. "Because whoever it is needs to clean up this mess. They need to officially dissolve the annexation, issue a public apology, and ensure this never happens again." Derek looked at Linda. Linda looked at the crowd. Then, slowly, Derek looked back at me. "Jack," he said, "we don't have anyone else. Nobody wants the job. Everyone is scared." He paused. "You know the bylaws better than anyone. You know the legal mess. You know the property lines." A sinking feeling formed in my stomach. "Don't say it." I warned. "I nominate Jack Monroe for interim president," Derek announced. "Second," shouted the guy who'd been shocked by the hot dog incident. "No," I said, backing away. "Absolutely not. I hate HOAs." "All in favor?" Derek asked. The hands went up again. All of them. "Motion passes," Derek said, a tired smile spreading across his face. "Congratulations, Mr. President." I stood there, stunned, looking at 100 expectant faces. I had come here to destroy the HOA, and in a twist of cosmic irony, I had just become its leader. But as I looked around the room, a new idea began to form in my mind. A radical, beautiful, final idea. "Fine," I said, stepping up to the podium. I picked up the gavel. It felt heavy. "I accept," I announced, "but I have only one agenda item." I looked at the crowd, and you're going to want to hear this. The morning after the coup, the neighborhood didn't just feel quiet. It felt liberated. I woke up with a strange headache. It wasn't from alcohol. I'd only had one beer to celebrate, but from the surreal realization that I, Jack Monroe, hater of all things bureaucratic, was now the president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. I made my coffee and walked out to the porch, half expecting to see a line of angry neighbors demanding I measure their grass height. But there was nothing. The nature preserve, my ranch, was empty. The electric fence hummed peacefully. Then, I looked down the road toward Margaret's house. It was a McMansion at the end of the cul-de-sac, painted a pristine, sterile beige. Usually, her driveway was empty and spotless. But today, there was something new on the lawn. A sign, "For sale." It had appeared overnight. Margaret wasn't just stepping down. She was running. I wasn't surprised. People like Margaret thrive on perceived respect. They need to walk into the grocery store and feel like the sheriff. They need the nod from the mailman, the fear in the eyes of the dog walkers. But after last night, after being exposed as a fraud, a liar, and a financial liability in front of the entire town, that respect had evaporated. She was no longer the queen. She was a pariah. I took a sip of coffee. "Good riddance," I muttered, but Margaret, true to her nature, couldn't leave without one last attempt to control the narrative. Around 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was an email notification. The official HOA mailing list. Subject: Resignation and Statement of Truth from Margaret Dawson. I opened it. It was a manifesto. 3 pages of single-space ranting. She claimed she was stepping down due to unprecedented harassment and a toxic community environment. She wrote that her vision for the park was misunderstood by small-minded individuals, and that she feared for her safety in a neighborhood that condoned violence against innocent picnic goers. She didn't apologize. Not for the fraud. Not for the lies. Not for the debt. She played the victim until the bitter end. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. The replies from the neighbors were already rolling in, and they were brutal. "Just go, Margaret. Where's our refund for flower pots? Nobody misses you." It was a digital firing squad. 2 days later, the moving truck arrived. It was a massive 18-wheeler that blocked the entire street. I watched from my porch as movers hauled out her furniture. The beige sofas, the ornate dining table that probably never saw a messy dinner, the endless boxes of decorations. Margaret was there, barking orders at the movers. She was wearing sunglasses big enough to weld in, trying to hide her face. She looked diminished. Her posture, usually rigid with self-importance, was slumped. Neighbors were watching, too, but they weren't waving goodbye. They were standing in their driveways, arms crossed, watching silently. It was the shunning. In a tight-knit community, silence is louder than screaming. At one point, she looked up and saw me. I was leaning against a post on my porch, holding a mug. Our eyes met across the distance. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just raised my mug in a mock toast. Goodbye, Karen. She looked away sharply, got into her Lexus, and sped off before the moving truck had even finished loading. She left her own house before her furniture did. She couldn't bear to look at us, at the people she thought she owned, who had finally proven that they owned themselves. As her car disappeared around the bend, I felt a weight lift off my chest. The invasion was over. The queen had fallen, but my work was just beginning. That afternoon, Derek, the vice president, I guess, met me at the clubhouse. He handed me a ring of keys. "These are for the office," he said nervously. "Margaret, she left in a state." "How bad?" "You'll see." I unlocked the door to the annex, the small office Margaret had ruled from. The air inside was stale. But what shocked me wasn't the smell, it was the walls. Margaret had turned the HOA office into a war room. Pinned to the corkboards were maps of the neighborhood. But they weren't normal maps. They were annotated. Red pins marked problem houses. Blue pins marked loyalists. My ranch was circled in thick red marker labeled obstruction, target for acquisition. There were photos. Photos of people's trash cans left out too long. Photos of unkempt hedges. Photos of me working on my tractor. She had been surveilling us. She hadn't just been managing the neighborhood. She had been stalking it. She was insane, Derek whispered, looking at a photo of his own house with a note that said, "Ugly patio furniture. Issue fine next month." She was a tyrant with too much time. I corrected. I walked over to the filing cabinet. It was locked, but the key was on the ring. I opened the top drawer. It was stuffed with unfiled violation notices. Hundreds of them. Fines she had written up but never sent, waiting for the right moment to use them as leverage. Then I found the binder. It was labeled the Monroe file. I pulled it out. It was 3 inches thick. I flipped it open. It went back 5 years. July 4th, 2021. Subject used unauthorized fireworks. November 12th, 2022. Subject's cows are audible from the street. January 5th, 2024. Subject refused to donate to the Spring Fling. She had been building a case against me for half a decade. She had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike, to take my land. The nature preserve wasn't a spontaneous idea. It was the climax of a 5-year obsession. I looked at Derek. "We need to burn all of this." "Can we do that?" he asked. "Legally? I'm the president." I said, tossing the binder into the trash can with a heavy thud. Executive order. We spent the next 4 hours shredding. We shredded the violation notices. We shredded the surveillance photos. We shredded the target maps. The shredder overheated twice. By the time we were done, the office was empty. The walls were bare. The filing cabinets contained only the essential financial records and the bylaws. "So," Derek said, wiping sweat from his forehead, "what now?" "We still have the debt. The $212,000 you sued us for." I sat in Margaret's chair. It was uncomfortable and squeaked. "Technically," I said, "the HOA still owes me that money. And since I am now the president, I have a fiduciary duty to address that debt." Derek looked terrified. "We can't pay it, Jack. If you enforce that judgment, the HOA goes bankrupt." I leaned back, putting my boots up on Margaret's desk. A slow grin spread across my face. "Exactly," I said. Derek frowned. "I don't follow." "Derek, think about it. An HOA exists to manage shared assets and enforce rules. But if an HOA is bankrupt, if it has zero money and massive liability, it can't function. It can't buy insurance. It can't pay for the clubhouse lights. It can't sue anyone. So, I said, if the HOA is insolvent, the only responsible legal move is to dissolve the corporation." Derek's eyes went wide. "Dissolve it? You mean end it?" "Kill it," I said. "Bury it. Salt the earth." I picked up the phone and dialed Curtis. "Hello, Mr. President." Curtis answered, clearly enjoying my new title. "Curtis, get the paperwork ready," I said. "We're gonna hold one last vote." The vote to end all votes. The kill switch. Curtis asked. The kill switch. I confirmed. I want this HOA gone by Friday. I hung up and looked at Derek. He was smiling. It was a nervous smile, but it was real. No more fines, he asked. No more fines, I said. No more inspections. No more Margarets. The neighborhood is going to love this, Derek said. They better. I stood up and grabbed my hat, because I got a ranch to run, and I'm tired of playing politician. The queen was gone. The castle was cleared. Now, it was time to tear down the walls so we could all finally breathe. Friday night arrived. The deadline. The end of the line. The community clubhouse was packed for the second time in a week. But the mood was different tonight. Tuesday had been angry. Tonight was terrified. The neighbors knew the math. They knew the HOA owed me $212,000. They knew the bank account only held $40,000. They were bracing for the impact of a special assessment that would wipe out their vacation funds. I walked in at 7 p.m. sharp. I didn't wear a suit. I didn't try to look like an executive. I wore my clean boots, my best denim shirt, and I carried two things, the gavel and a single sheet of paper. I walked in front of the room. Derek and the remaining board members were already there, looking like men facing a firing squad. They nodded at me grimly. I slammed the gavel down. Bang. This meeting is called to order, I said. My voice didn't need a microphone. I'll keep this short. We have a financial crisis. A murmur went through the room. As you know, I continued, pacing in front of the table. The HOA has been billed for 20 years of maintenance on the Monroe Ranch. The total debt is $212,450. The HOA is currently insolvent. We cannot pay this bill. A woman in the front row raised her hand, her voice shaking. So, does that mean we have to pay it? Are you going to sue us individually? I stopped pacing. I looked at her, Mrs. Higgins, a nice lady who baked cookies for school. She looked ready to cry. Legally, I said, I could. The HOA is a corporation, and you are the shareholders. The debt flows downhill. The room went deathly silent. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator. However, I said, letting the tension hang in the air for just a second longer. I am not Margaret. I don't want your money. I don't want your savings. And I certainly don't want to be the president of this club. I held up the single sheet of paper. I am proposing a deal, a settlement. Everyone leaned forward. I, Jack Monroe, the creditor, agreed to forgive 100% of the debt. I will wipe the slate clean. $0. No lawsuits. No special assessments. Gasps of relief erupted. Someone sobbed. But I held up a hand. On one condition. The silence returned instantly. The condition, I said, looking at every single face in the room, is that we vote, right here, right now, to legally dissolve the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. We liquidate the assets. We surrender the charter. And we end this organization permanently. I placed the paper on the table. It was the Articles of Dissolution. If you vote yes, I said, the debt vanishes. The rules vanish. No more fines for trash cans. No more approval forms for painting your front door. No more power-tripping presidents. We go back to being just neighbors. I looked at Derek. But if you vote no, then I want my check by Monday. Derek stood up so fast his chair nearly fell over. I motioned to dissolve, he shouted. Second, shouted Mrs. Higgins. Third. Fourth. It wasn't a vote. It was a stampede. Hands shot up in the air. People were cheering before I even called for count. It was unanimous. Not a single person, not even the die-hard rule followers, wanted to save the HOA. They chose freedom. They chose their wallets. They chose sanity. I banged the gavel one last time. It hit the table with a sound that felt like a prison door opening. Motion passed. I declared, the Willow Creek HOA is dead. Pandemonium. People were hugging, high-fiving. The fear that had gripped the room evaporated, replaced by a giddy, drunken sense of relief. I looked at the gavel in my hand, a symbol of petty power, a tool Margaret had used to bludgeon this neighborhood into submission. I tossed it into the trash, next to the podium. Clunk. Meeting adjourned. I said, forever. The following Saturday, I hosted a victory lap. I didn't call it a community event because there was no committee to prove the name. I just called it barbecue. My ranch, the very land that started this war, was open, but this time it was on my terms. I opened the main gate. I turned off the electric fence, though I left the signs up just for memories. I fired up the massive smoker I used for branding season. I threw on 50 pounds of brisket, ribs, and chicken. I put coolers of beer on the porch. And they came. Not as invaders. Not as entitled trespassers claiming my land as their right. They came as guests. Derek brought potato salad. Store-bought. Thank God. Mrs. Higgins brought a tray of brownies. Even the guy who got shocked by the hot dog incident showed up. He shook my hand and laughed about it. Best shock therapy I ever had. He joked, cracking a beer fixed my back pain for a week. The atmosphere was completely different. Without the HOA rules hanging over their heads, people were relaxed. They weren't judging each other's lawns. They weren't whispering about violations. They were just eating, drinking, and laughing. Curtis arrived around 2 p.m. He was wearing casual clothes, which for him meant a polo shirt that cost more than my truck. He walked up to the smoker, stole a piece of burnt-end brisket, and nodded approvingly. "You know," he said, chewing thoughtfully, "this is highly irregular. Usually when I win a case, I just get a check. I've never had a client overthrow a local government before." "It wasn't a government," I said, flipping a rack of ribs. "It was a dictatorship with a budget deficit." "Still," Curtis grinned, "you dissolved it. Poof, gone. Do you realize how rare that is? Most HOAs are like cockroaches. They survive nuclear war. You killed this one with a spreadsheet and a fence." "I didn't kill it," I said, looking out at the crowd. "Margaret killed it. She got greedy. She tried to take the one thing you never take from a rancher. His land. His peace and quiet," I corrected. I looked over the crowd. Kids were running in the field, safely away from cows. Parents were sitting on hay bales. It was exactly what Margaret had claimed she wanted, community unity. But she couldn't achieve it because she tried to force it. She tried to legislate connection. Real community doesn't come from bylaws. It comes from mutual respect. It comes from knowing that if you respect my boundaries, I'll invite you in for a burger. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in streaks of violet and gold, the party started to wind down. People came up to me, shaking my hand, thanking me. "Thanks for the food, Jack. Thanks for getting rid of her. Thanks for the freedom." I stood on my porch as the last cars drove away. The ranch was quiet again. The stars were coming out, pinpricks of light in the vast Texas sky. I walked over to the fence line. The wires were cold and silent now. The nature preserve signs were gone, replaced by my old, weathered private property posts. Margaret was gone. The HOA was gone. The debt was gone. I took a sip of my beer and leaned against the railing. They say you can't fight City Hall. Maybe that's true, but an HOA isn't City Hall. It's just a group of people who forgot that authority is a privilege, not a right. And sometimes all it takes is one person, one stubborn, well-prepared, slightly vindictive person, to remind them of that. I had defended my castle. I had freed the village. And most importantly, I still had my 50 acres. I finished my beer, set the bottle down, and looked out at the dark, peaceful expanse of my land. "Not a bad week," I whispered to the cows. "Not bad at all." Outro/monologue to camera. The truth is, bullies only have power as long as you play by their rules. Margaret thought she could use the system to crush me, but she forgot that the system is a double-edged sword. She tried to steal my land with paperwork, so I bury her with it. She tried to use the community as a weapon, so I turned the weapon around. If you're dealing with a nightmare HOA or a neighbor who thinks they own the world, remember this story. Document everything. Know your rights. And never, ever be afraid to shock the system a little bit. If you enjoyed seeing a Karen get exactly what she deserved, hit that like button. And if you want to hear about the time I use a tractor to solve a parking dispute, make sure you're subscribed. I'm Jack Monroe. Get off my lawn.